latest version of the official Queen podcast with me, Nick Weymouth. There is actually a sort of fan-based one, really. I wanted to get into the mind of what it's like to be not just a collector, but a real lifer, a real Queen lifelong fan. So I spoke to a guy called Steve Coles, who I actually met through working on Queen Online. He's done some stuff for me previously on the message boards, and he's an avid collector of audio more than anything, not necessarily memorabilia. But as this interview will roll out, you'll see exactly how many versions of particular albums or singles or whatever he's got his hands on over the years. So again, one for the fans, really, one for the collectors.
We gotta tear it up, stir it up, raise it up, baby.
We are at Queen Online HQ. I'm sat here with Steve Coles, who's a friend of mine I've got to know through working on Queen Online. And I thought it'd be nice to have, rather than interview band members, which can be a bit, repetitive after a while, I thought we'd interview some fans. So Steve's come up to London today, and we're just going to crack on, really. So, Steve, I don't know, where did you start with Queen? How did you, where does it start with a band like that? How old were you when you first?
When I first heard of them, I was 13. A friend of my brother's was the son of an A&R man for EMI.
Right.
And I occasionally used to go around with my brother around to this guy's house. And he had the album on. I didn't really take much notice of it. When they hit me...
Which album was it? Sorry.
This is Queen One.
Queen One. Oh, right. Okay, yeah. Okay.
About February 1974, the band got a spot on Top of the Pops. I was quite an avid Top of the Pops watcher then. As soon as I saw them, that was it.
So what was the thing that struck?
They weren't your average pretty boys that you'd seen in a band at the time. You had Freddie with the prominent teeth and all that. And
they were supposed to have pretty boys in their presentation, maybe, but they weren't looking.
I just also thought the song Seven Seas are right. I think Brian once said that he calls it the kitchen sink song because they threw everything into the intro, and the record just blew me away. As soon as I got on vinyl, I couldn't stop playing it.
So what were you listening to before then? What were your influences then?
Most of the sort of glam bands of the early 70s, like Slade, T-Rex, Nazareth, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So it wasn't too much of a jump, but it was something that went, oh, hang on.
It was the next step onwards, I think.
So what happens then? So you've gone out, you bought the single, and you start going back to your brother's friend, and what was that album you had? Where did you go from there?
We sort of went back to him and said, yeah, that band you played last year are quite good, aren't they? From the single, I then bought Queen 2. I didn't get the first album, buy back into the first album, until just before Sheer Heart Attack.
Right, okay.
When I got the first album, it wasn't as impressive as Queen 2 was.
Okay,
But
yeah.
saying that Sheer Heart Attack, when that came out, I thought, yeah.
So, I mean, without sounding rude or ageist, what is it like? Was it like being a record buyer at that time? What was it? How much information was there out there for someone who was wanting to get into a new band? There's no internet. There's no.
At the time, I was 13 or 14, so
Yeah.
I had to fund my interests either with sort of Christmas presents, birthday presents, or with paper around.
Yeah.
So the only chance you really got to see new bands then were on things like Old Grey Whistle Test and Top of the Pops.
Yeah. Okay.
You didn't have the internet like you got now, where stuff can get pushed at you. Radio maybe, but at the time, kids that sort of age only listened to the chart show anyway. So
Where did you scurry about to find information on the band then? How did you, apart from maybe album sleeves,
in the music papers as they were, that was probably until maybe 76. I think I joined the fan club in late 76.
Right.
And that then became an avenue for information, but even then it was slow information. You'd find out about things after they happened, not before generally.
So you're slowly building up your Queen collection, as it were. So you're slowly going through the albums. Well, how much is an album costing? An LP then?
Back then, just under a fiver, I think.
Yeah.
I seem to remember singles was 59p, 79p, something like that. By the time Bohemian Rhapsody came out, I was waiting in the record shop for that one to turn up, and I bought 2 copies straight away in the picture sleeves. One to play and one to put in the box, never to be played again.
Well, this is actually my next question. So you're slowly building up the singles all the singles as they come out, I presume. and the albums when they come, literally on day one as they...
From 70 the right onwards, but saying that, I didn't get my first copy of Keep Yourself Alive until probably halfway through 75. EMI still had that on catalogue
Right.
at that time, but not for much longer than that, I don't think.
So at what point do you think you kind of... You became a collector? Was there a tipping point? Was there a particular purchase where you said...
It was pretty much, I think, when I started earning decent money, and then I was going into London to buy things like Japanese singles and things like that were in record shops at the time.
So you were going back to fill in your collection. So, but how did you find out about Japanese singles, for example? How did you know that these things existed, or they were different to anything that was released in the UK? Or
by the time I started earning money, I was going into London for social reasons, so I'd pop in somewhere like HMV or whatever and just have a look through their racks. And the shop in London's just got a bigger sort of thing than just the stuff that's issued in the UK.
so, you weren't doing this with any other bands at the time? It was just Queen was the stuff you were starting to buy, everything that they released. Was there anyone else alongside it, or did you have to make a choice financially?
No, not really. The other stuff, when obviously there was gaps between Queen putting stuff out, and I'd buy other stuff then. Trying to think of the other bands I got into at that sort of time. I suppose Supertramp and groups like that.
So,
But it's mainly singles I was buying then, not albums.
so seeing them live then, when did that first happen for you? When did
First
that...
happened at May the 13th, I think it was, Wembley Ice Park, 1978, on the News of the World tour.
So you hadn't had a chance to see them before then? Were you too young, didn't have the money, or they didn't come near
Pretty
you?
much so, yeah. I tried to get tickets before that, but never managed it. And on that particular occasion, then I went into London the night before the tickets went on sale. So they're selling them at Keith Prowse somewhere off Oxford Street. And camped out overnight out there. I was about like fifth in the queue.
Excellent.
But it's a standard thing with tickets. When you actually get your tickets, even though you're fifth in the queue and it's the only place selling them, you're halfway back down Wembley and you're thinking, who got the ones in front of me?
Wow, okay, yeah. So, I was going to say, buying tickets there must be very different, a lot fairer as well. You turn up, if you're the first ones there, you get your tickets, don't you?
Well, at least I got tickets for the show I wanted.
So what was that like then? What was your day made up of knowing you're going to see Queen for the first time?
That particular occasion, I managed to get 4 tickets, and I took my brother and his partner. He was a taxi driver at the time. He actually fell asleep halfway through the show.
How much did the ticket cost then?
I'm just guessing about £13, £14, something.
Oh really? Okay, it's more than I thought actually.
It might have been a little bit cheaper than that.
So through listening to Queen, did you get into anybody else at all? Because obviously you've realised that they're quite a varied group by this time in what they wrote. Did they bring in anything else to you? Open your eyes a little bit more?
The other bands that I think really went in hand with Queen and musical dexterity on the stuff they're doing, 10cc, The Sweet and the ELO. And I suppose those 4 bands I really sort of travel with, I suppose.
Do you still listen to Queen regularly in that
Yes.
sense? You do?
Yes.
Do you go back to the regular studio albums, or are you now listening to scraps and bits and bobs that come out you find, or different?
This is studio albums, really.
Are you really? You generally do still?
Well, I still collect vinyl. I might have most of the albums sort of 20 plus times. I'll still look out for a new one of it.
So, which one do you spin the most? I think I know the answer to this question anyway, but...
My favourite 2 albums are Queen 2 and Day at the Races. Different reasons.
Yeah, so Queen 2. So, what if I just say that to you, what does that bring to you?
An album that maybe I was playing for over the 100th time and still hearing new stuff on it. There's just so much piled onto it. It's taking art to the extreme. And where I think Day at the Races counterpoints that is it's 10 3-4 minute songs that
Great pop songs.
great, yeah. It's,
essentially. Yeah.
yeah. So they're 2 totally different animals, but equally just sort of up in my estimation.
So when something like although you're clearly you're Queen through and through, every release that comes out do you buy it no matter what?
Pretty much, yeah.
And that's been standard from Seven Seas of Riot onwards?
Yeah.
So you know when it's coming out, you know the release date?
Yeah,
You have to buy
it could be a single that's on the album I've already got, A-side and B-side, and I'll still try and get the single in as many forms as I can. The English one, German one, whatever.
So by the time, everyone hates throwing Hot Space out there into the fire, but obviously it was a clear departure on what they did. So if you're that much into a band, it doesn't matter. You wouldn't stop listening. You wouldn't stop buying records for that reason. If you didn't like a particular record, or it threw you a little bit, or was a challenge to you.
Not at all. There's plenty of people I had as friends at the time, and fans, who jumped off the ship when Hot Space or Kind of Magic came out because it wasn't the direction they thought the band should be going. With me, I'd seen the bigger picture in the earlier albums anyway, so whatever they turned their hand to, I was going to at least give it a spin and see if I liked it or not. And I can't honestly say they've ever released an album, up until recently, where I would have frowned on it.
Yeah, I mean,
I was going the same direction as the band were taking me.
Yeah, it's part of the journey, I suppose. I think you'll know you're going to be throwing some sort of left turn somewhere along the line, aren't you? With someone like Queen, don't you? They're, from the off, I think they put their stake in the ground, didn't they? Somewhat, I think.
With Hot Space, it was a clear departure. The first side was one style, and the second side was typically Queen.
Yeah. Yes.
So they're very much an album of two sides.
Did you ever meet any of the band members? Have you ever met any of them?
Not before Freddie died.
Right. So, have you ever tried to or seek that out, or?
I just didn't think it happened to the likes of me.
Right. So after Freddie died, was there? Did you make a point of doing that, or was it just that they became more available, or you just were in the right place at the right time? Or?
Well, I happened to be off shift, sat home watching a TV program called TVAM back in that day.
Right. Yeah.
And they said that they were going to have Brian May on there the next day. So I went into work because I was usually working the next day and said, "Any chance of tomorrow off?" And they went, "Yeah, if you put in a day's holiday for it."
Yeah, fair enough.
So me and the wife and the kids got in a car at sort of 4 o'clock the next morning and headed down to Camden Lock, which was the TVM studios then. It then became an MTV. And when we turned up there, we noticed that there wasn't a gate for the cars to drive through or anything. They just pulled up in the forecourt, and you could nab people. And we were the only people there.
Right.
And the doorman said, "Who are you here to see?" And Brian May. And he went, "Well, you're going to get two for the price of one because Roger Taylor's coming as well."
Oh, right. Okay.
So
Interesting.
it was a double bonus. So that was the first time I met Brian and Roger. Roger isn't particularly good with mornings. I think he's an evening person. So he wasn't particularly social.
Documented, right? Okay, yeah.
And one of the things I had to try and get autographed was Brian had just released the Monday before Driven by You.
Yes. Okay.
So I offered it up for him to autograph that, and he turned around to me and said, "Oh, can I have this?" He says, "I haven't seen a revenue copy yet."
Oh, right. Okay.
Or I've seen some promotional ones. And I'm not in the habit of giving things away to people who are much richer than me, Brian. So if you can give me something, I'll let you have it. He went, "No." So he signed the CD, and that was that.
The CD single, was it?
Yeah.
So it was. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's a big hit for him, actually, wasn't it? Yeah. So you've established you are this collector. So I want to go back to this collecting thing. I think so. You buy everything that's released. Are there certain things that you do you buy? Do you buy it day of release, or do you wait to see if it might come up cheaper later on, or do you feel like you're running the risk of not getting the early pressing, or?
Generally, I try and get it as soon after release as possible.
Right.
There's certain occasions, Brian and Kerry released Acoustic by Candlelight on vinyl, and by the time the retailers actually started shipping the things out, all the allocated copies are sold. So if you didn't advance order that, you were paying a lot of money on eBay for a 25 quid product, maybe up to 75, 80 pounds for it. So.
Have you ever missed out? What have you missed out on? Something in particular?
There's plenty I've missed out on, but most of it's been in places where at the time I couldn't get it. Jazz Picture Disc, for example.
Sure.
When that was released in France, if you happen to be in the right place when EMI had brought copies of that into the UK, then you got one. If you didn't, you didn't. So it wasn't until the advent of eBay that I managed to get a real one of those.
So we're talking. I just want to put this into some perspective. So we're talking about you buying a thing on day of release. You've been collecting since 1973.
74.
74. What's your house at night? Where do you put all this stuff? How much stuff do you have? I want to put this into perspective because we'll carry on talking about this, but I think it's. You mentioned you had 20 copies of each studio album already. So that's 15 studio albums times 20.
If you can imagine standard LP boxes that carry transport boxes, I've generally got one of those for each album.
Right, okay.
Stashed away. And then I've got the copies that I play, which are near to the record deck.
Which versions do you play? Is there a certain version you always play of that album that sound better or warmer or?
Yeah, I tend to prefer. One of the things I tried to do with the albums was if an album was recorded in Germany, I'd get the German pressing of it.
Okay.
Or if it was recorded in Switzerland, I'd try and buy a copy there. I don't know why I've done that, but generally German pressing sounds a bit warmer than anybody else's, but
Germany.
it varies album to album.
Is there any reason why that would be? I don't know.
In the main, with the UK copies, the band chose which studios actually cut the albums. So you buy a British copy of Sheer Heart Attack, and it would be mastered at the mastering lab in Los Angeles because that's where the band chose to do it.
Okay.
But not all copies around the world are done at the place that the band chose.
Right, I see. Okay.
So I can understand why most people go for the UK copies, because when the band have chosen Sterling in New York to do the cut, then the UK copy is usually one that's been cut there.
So is it just the audio products and visual products that you collect, or is there any other bits and bobs? Do you?
It's mainly that. I mean, if I go to a gig, I'll buy a T-shirt, but I don't go out of the way to buy all.
So it's not all the merch. You're not looking for things that were in record stores like stands and memorabilia.
A lot of that sort of stuff I've picked up. That's been a byproduct of I'm mainly into the music.
Into the music, okay, yeah. Because obviously, we have the one from Gary Taylor who we work with as well. A lot of Queen fans will know, and I've seen some of his room, and he's everything. He's got it's the stands of Brian, the mobiles that were available in our price at the time, and phone cards and all that sort of stuff. It's impressive. I mean, I don't know how he gets
when they started doing this sort of stuff, you could go into the shop and say, when chance of having that when it comes down?
Yeah.
And they'd stick your name on it, and when they took it down, they'd give it to you. But then the record stores started getting a bit smart, saying we could sell this stuff.
Right, I see, okay, yeah.
And all of a sudden they started wanting ridiculous money for things.
Oh, silly money, oh, okay.
Particularly if it's, when the band did News of the World, they made so many of these plastic robots.
Yes, I've seen them.
So they held the albums, and stores started selling them for stupid money.
Oh, really? What's the most expensive thing you've actually bought? You've gone out to collect and bought.
When they originally pressed "Keep Yourself Alive" as a single release, they decided, because it's in stereo, most of the radio stations that played it would bounce off one channel, which meant they lost half the music. So they did a special pressing in mono,
right,
that they gave to the radio stations, so that you got the whole feel of the song, no matter how they processed it. And I recently bought one of these mono copies for about £90. A few years back I bought original EMI Larry Lurex. That was probably about a similar sort of amount. The Jazz Picture discs.
Yeah. So you're trawling eBay for these things, collectors or record fairs, or
constantly on the lookout. I mean, there's a whole load of stuff that they released in the States, well, not released in the States, but put out to radio stations in America on 12-inch single.
Right.
So that goes back as far as We Will Rock You, We're the Champions. That one fetches a lot of money now. I'll get to get one of those.
So did the internet make it easier for you
Oh yeah. Yes.
and more expensive for you?
No. The things that you'd snap up because you'd never seen them, now you tend to see them on a cyclic basis.
So is there any one particular thing that you're looking out for? You're always on the prowl with
There's
stuff.
one thing I'll never have, which is a Blue Vinyl Bohemian Rhapsody, because the minimum you pay for a real one of those at the moment is about £1,500 to £2,000.
Right, okay.
I've never actually seen one in the flesh apart from at the SAS exhibition, which was Roger's one.
Right, okay.
That's the only one I've ever actually seen in the flesh of that anyway. So.
What's the best bargain you've ever found? As in something you've gone, oh my goodness, they don't realise what this person doesn't realise what they're selling, or like you found, or you stumbled across.
There's been a few of those.
Oh yeah.
In the late 80s, Mr. Bad Guy on CD. The only ones that were actually made in Europe to be sold in Europe were made in France, and they were fetching about £150. I managed to pick one of those up at a car boot sale for like £3.
Did you play it cool?
Oh yeah.
Oh, so much CDs, how much are they? Oh, £3 each. Oh, okay. This one? Okay. You didn't even try and haggle?
No.
Nah, no point.
No. And just after Fred died, I think people thought that their collections might go the wrong way, and there's people selling entire collections at car boot sales.
Really? That's interesting.
So whereas record fairs were selling the 12-inch singles at £15 a go, I would go to a car boot sale and buy a whole collection for like £15, £20.
Have you ever bought something just because it's there? Just because it's like, that's cheap, I've got all these, or this.
Frequently.
I just, you can't sell that, oh God, I'll have it.
Frequently.
Really?
Yeah.
You can't help yourself?
I can't.
But even if you look at it, you go, no, I actually do have this.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I find it very hard to walk out of the shop and leave Queen stuff there.
It's funny, I've done it a couple of times where I think the Jeff Buckley album, Grace, is one of my favourite albums. And it's a wonderful piece of art, it's very heartfelt, it's alt rock, it's a bit of soul, everything. And I see it sometimes for $2.99 in HMVs. And I feel offended by it because it's so cheap. You know, this album should never be at this price. It's a weird one for me. I don't buy it, but I think, you know, it's got to be at least £5. You can't, and some people might think, that's madness. Well, you know, someone's got to pick that up for £2. No, they will, and that's great, they'll get into it. But I still have no problem buying music. I mean, I work in the music industry, so I feel like I'm fueling my own job, but I still get so much out of buying music anyway. Personally, going out and finding stuff, but I mean, you clearly do. But you do it in a shop, but you also do it in another sphere, don't you? Clearly, is that your what? Is that your hobby? Is that your main passion and everything?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No.
Yeah.
So, you ever been given a decent freebie? You know, you kind of gone, oh wow, okay, you know, or just unexpected kind of. Well, I don't mind admitting. I don't mind admitting here. I've given Steve a few bits of times. Don't mean anything to me. Might mean the world to him. So to say thank you for a few things.
I wouldn't say Return of the Champions is my favourite album ever, but Nick very kindly once gave me a copy of it. It was autographed by Brian Roger and Paul Rogers, and that was very nice.
I don't remember that one. I think there you go.
Yeah. So that makes that album special to me, even though I don't particularly like the album.
What was I going to say? Just having a look at my notes here. Sorry, one thing. Are you a bootleg guy? You don't worry, I won't get in trouble for this. It's fine.
Not particularly. I've bought them in the past. Probably the first one I ever got was one called Sheep Kickers, and recent releases have shown the reason that bootleg's such high quality is it's live at the Rainbow, and a version that Roy Thomas Baker had mixed and edited that never got released, but somehow the bootleggers got their hands on it. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for it. A lot of the stuff I've bought on bootleg has since come out. Things like Montreal, which I think was labelled up as an Argentina gig on the bootleg. I've bought a few bootlegs over the years, but there's people out there who've got literally everything that's ever put out, and I'm nothing like that.
Have you ever stumbled across something like that where something you bought, you thought it was something else, and something else has been on it? And you've gone, oh, hang on, I've found a few.
That Argentina one, particularly, as soon as I put it on, I thought to myself, this is the video We Will Rock You, which was the first video Queen ever actually released. I think that and Greatest Flicks would have been about the same time, I think. Which was the Montreal show. So yeah, that one surprised me. In recent times, I've picked up Night at the Warehouse, which is a Copenhagen gig that the band did, I think, in '76. That one's quite good because it's got like White Man on it.
Right, okay, yeah.
Stuff that so far the band haven't released. I look forward to the band releasing shows from '77, '78 because that was when I first saw them. So.
I was going to move on to that topic in particular, actually. So, I just want to go back to say you've amassed this catalogue of Queen material. So I said, do you display it in any particular way at home, or is it literally in boxes? Do you know where it all is? Is it filed in any particular way, or are there any bits you just get out and look at, or?
With the singles boxes, I've tended to categorise those into UK releases, and like my primary copies are in one or two boxes there. Okay. And then there's other boxes I just fill up with stuff as I triplicate or get more and more of them. And I've got boxes for the imports and such like. As I say with the albums, I've tried to stick each of the studio albums in one box because it's got to that sort of proportion. With South American copies, American copies, European copies.
So you buying all those online, or when you go away on holiday, do you always raid a record store or go and find us?
When I go to Switzerland or something like that, I'll find second-hand record shops or car boot sales and such like, and snap up anything Queen.
Because you do go to Montreal, I know this, don't you? How many times have you been there?
About 5 or 6 now.
Well, on that note, clearly, you were completely, engrossed in Queen. Queen with your band. So, what happened for you personally in 1991 then? So when your favourite group was.
I thought that was it, end of chapter. When I went to the tribute concert in April '92, when the show finished, there was about 500 or so who didn't leave the stadium when the music finished, who just stood there looking at the stage thinking, that's it, game over. And time's passed since then, and we've had Made in Heaven, and Paul Rodgers Tour, and now Mr. Lambert.
So, but in 1991, when Freddie died,
what
did you go through then? How did you find out? The
day the music died, as it says.
How did you find out he was ill? Or did you? I don't know. Did you?
On the news.
You just on the news?
It was on the news the evening before he died, and then I got up the next morning to go into work, and it was all over the TV screens that Fred had died. So. Did
people turn to you, knowing that you were a Queen fan,
yeah,
saying a thing?
You got both sides of the coin. People either saying, no, it's affecting you, or people just taking the piss, because it's a bit of a popular time for people to have a joke.
Yes, I know. We know that. But did it affect you in any particular way, or?
Not as a fan, no. Still my favourite band, whether Fred's alive or not.
Yeah. Well, what is your fondest memory of the band? What would you, if you, someone who didn't know about Queen and said, "Oh no, I understand you're a massive Queen fan." What's a standout moment for you? Be it a recording
I've experienced
or
probably Nebworth.
Nebworth, right? Okay.
None of us knew the 140,000 who were there. None of us knew that'd be the last gig ever, but it was a special gig.
But it was a good show anyway. Was it to be there? What was the date like?
Back end of the tour, they hung the craft by then.
Yeah, and the home run as well, weren't they? They just kind of nailed it.
Mm.
Where were you in the crowd?
I think the mixing desk was about 200 metres from the stage, and we were just off to the right of the mixing desk. So.
What was the best you've ever seen them though? Was it that show, or was it something about that show, or was there a better show, but this show means more to you?
It's difficult. I was much nearer the front of Milton Keynes. I don't remember Milton Keynes really being as good a show as Nebworth was.
Yeah. Had you been to the Wembley shows on the Magic Tour?
No.
You hadn't.
Couldn't get tickets, otherwise I went to never.
I see. Right. So you hadn't seen Wembley, but you know. Okay. So
We've
never.
been around all the ticket agencies, but the Wembley shows, the first one sold out, and then by the next time they announced a second gig at Wembley. By the next time I could get to a ticket office again, they'd sold out again. I wasn't on the phone back then, so.
Yeah, sure. So then after that, obviously you had your the tribute concert. Any particular highlights for you on that day? Performances or just the whole thing, or just the being there, or?
A lot of the bands, I mean, I never really heard before. Never heard that much of Guns N' Roses or Metallica.
Yeah, they were the biggest bands in the world at the time.
No.
Maybe you're a bit older than me, because I mean, I've always gone on record saying I watched it because I had, you know, I liked Queen and I was always going to watch it, but I was a huge Guns N' Roses fan and I knew they were playing, so that was it. I was glued to the screen for them every second. Well, I thought they ripped it up that day. Some people disagree with me, but they were the biggest.
They impressed me.
They were the biggest band in the world at the time.
Who didn't impress me on the day? Bob Geldof and maybe Spinal Tap. Everything else was quite good, I thought.
Yeah, Spinal Tap I saw as a bit of a filler. Kind of. I mean, I was 16. I didn't know what Spinal Tap was really. I knew they were a Mickey Take band. I was like, what? Are they just filling in for a while until they can get the next band ready, or
taking 10 minutes to get
move it
the
on?
song going.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
Guitars don't work. High spot of the day's got to be George Michael. It was at the time, and since then people have gone on record and saying, "Oh yeah, he stole the show."
Yeah.
But on the day, it came across that he was good. We all stood outside Wembley waiting to get in. I think gates opened something like 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And they were doing sound checks from about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock onwards. Bits of Somebody to Love, I think, and We're the Champions. I particularly remember them doing We're the Champions. I don't think they had Liza Minnelli on the stage, but the band was sound checking.
Yeah.
We're the Champions, and that really struck me. Stood outside.
Yeah. So Queen effectively at this point, 1992, you think finished, ended. Had you been following their solo stuff as well? Did you buy their solo stuff? Had you been buying Roger's material? And Brian obviously was starting out pretty soon with his stuff.
I'd say generally the only point I fell over with that was maybe The Cross. I wasn't very impressed with Shove It when it came out, so I didn't. It's the one sort of Queen thing I didn't buy on day of release after Shove It. So the 2 albums that The Cross did after that I've had to pick up retrospectively. But that's the only point of the solo stuff I've really fallen down on was The Cross.
So then Brian May's going out on tour in 92, 93. Yeah, that's about right. And then obviously then Roger's got records out, coming out. So are you then buying those and following them live and that sort of thing? What was it like seeing Brian May solo band? The Brian May band? Brian May solo
Very,
band?
very impressive. I think studio-wise, Roger probably nips it in terms of the quality of the stuff, but that's only because he's probably put out so much.
Yeah.
Brian's live shows were very impressive at the time, and I think it was 98, had the chance to see a Brian and a Roger gig within a couple of months of each other. So I caught Roger at Gosport on his Electric Fire tour, and Brian at Royal Albert Hall on his Another World tour. And both of those were impressive shows.
What did you think when you started coming out that there was going to be a new Queen album, which turned out to be Made in Heaven? Were you expecting that sort of thing, or because it's a very rare thing to do at those times still, you know, taking people's vocals and.
Because I was in the fan club at the time, I knew that they'd been working on tracks just prior to Freddie dying, or in the year Freddie died. So when it was announced that they were finishing those tracks off, I wasn't as surprised as maybe people who hadn't heard that. So, although there was never a guarantee anything was coming, when it was announced it was coming, it didn't surprise me.
What was it like buying a Queen album, knowing that Freddie wasn't with us anymore? You know, 1995, this Queen album coming out. Still the same thing, still went out first day, bought it, boom. I
was working in Germany at the time, and I didn't buy it, I don't think, on the day of release, but the Saturday after in Bremen. And I remember going back to the accommodation I was in and playing the arse off the album. I really liked it.
It's a funny one because I think my favourite albums, I think they probably are first or second album, possibly News of the World. But the albums I play more are actually Hot Space and Made in Heaven. I think it's because they're different. There's something different about their makeup or what people think of them, or it's a strange one. I don't know why I do that. I do that in a lot of bands' catalogues. I sometimes pick out the oddity and I really home in on that one. I don't know why I do that. I've mentioned this before. I think I do in another interview that with the Stones I'll go and listen to Dirty Work and Undercover or Emotional Rescue. You know, maybe because I've played, like you said, The Art of Exile on Main Street and Sticky Fingers and Let It Bleed and all that sort of thing. I don't know. Yeah, I suppose you can only... Weird one, I don't know why I do that. I have no explanation to why I do that.
With Queen, I tend to play maybe the first 5 or 6 albums more than I play the rest.
Yeah. So what are your hopes for releases? You know, I know I'm sitting here in the know, as it were. And what did you think of Light the Rainbow song?
Excellent. Absolutely excellent. Particularly the November show. As I say, for years and years I had the March shows, or the March show, on a bootleg called Cheeky, because when that one came out, I was like, oh, okay, it's a 7 gig. I didn't actually realise it was. So I was very impressed with the November shows and also the DVD Blu-ray release of it. So a lot more of that. I particularly like the 3 new tracks on Forever.
Right, okay, I was going to ask you about those, yeah.
So it would be my wish that the band could find more stuff to work on and put it out there. Failing that, maybe remix some of their catalogue. I don't mean sort of dance, trance mix.
Okay.
Making it sound a little bit different to the versions that we know.
Because clearly you knowing what you know, knowing what I know about you and knowing what you obviously know what stuff exists, don't you, that we could release.
I probably know a portion of it.
Yeah, you know obviously there's live releases that could be pushed out and all that sort of thing. But did you like the box set feel to it? I mean, that's definitely the sort of way that we'll be going, in the sense that, you know, the way people buy music these days, it's often streamed or downloaded, or as you know, just as a living in the ether, as it were, or it's a physical merchandise box. It's a big release. You know, you get the vinyl, you get the book, you get everything now. I think it's kind of like
the vinyl and the book. Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. All the badges and T-shirts and stuff like that. I don't think it's absolutely necessary in a music product.
So you're not with a release like Light the Rainbow, you haven't got anything to hide behind anyway, because it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic. I actually preferred the March show. That's just me personally listening to them. Something about
I've always liked the March show.
Yeah. Oh, right. What's the last bit I was going to talk to you about? Ben, who's going to edit this, he'll figure out that we're just rambling for a little bit here. What do you think of? What do you think of Queen, the way they are now, in the sense that obviously you thought it ended in '91, and the guys had their solo material, and then obviously, we'll rock you. But I mean, I think you're quite knowledgeable in that you understand that this is the music business. And Queen is.
When they first announced We Will Rock You the musical, I was extremely sceptical about it.
However, how many times did you see it?
Well, I went to one of the shows that was before the actual official opening night, one of the premieres. And I remember coming out of there thinking, this isn't how I thought it'd be. And I was completely blown away by it. So, in the space of like 2 hours, I changed my mind completely on the whole concept of a musical. You could probably say the same about the Queen and Paul Rodgers tour. I wound up going to see that 4 times. I've yet to be bitten by the Adam Lambert thing.
Better hurry. Sold out UK tour, kids. But the Paul Rodgers, the Paul Rodgers thing was, I guess, as they really went over the top. Then, you know, they'd done bits and bobs.
It helps.
Queen
I like
plus,
Paul.
Queen,
I like Paul Rodgers before Queen ever got associated with him. That helps. Whereas in Adam Lambert's case, I mean, I bought his solo albums and a live DVD CD he released, and I've yet to be bitten by it. I don't see I don't see the bloke as anything special on his own. He might be when you stick him in front of Brian and Roger, but it doesn't do it for me.
I'm just trying to think what we could round up on, really. We covered most of these points. Absolutely. Alright, Ben, I'm just trying to find something to round up on, to be honest. Oh, okay, fine. So, just rounding up, you mentioned what your favourite album was, or favourite 2 albums, Queen 2 and A Day at the Races. So, you pick out, can you pick out a single? Can you pick out a top 5 tracks, that really stand out for you? Is there anything that...
My favourite Queen song?
Yeah.
Show Must Go On.
I knew you were going to say that for some reason. Did I know that already?
No, maybe.
No.
It's my favourite song by anybody ever.
Oh, really?
Probably always will be.
Right. Is it just the makeup of the song, or what it means, or what it can? Because there's a sort of emotional attachment to it. There's not a message behind it, but we all know when it was released, don't we, and how it can be linked to when Freddie left. Do you think that's part of it?
I think it's the biggest ball the band ever dropped. It was in the charts and on its way down the charts when Freddie died. And EMI pulled it.
Right.
So it just carried on going out the charts. If they'd put that back on the shelves again, it would have been guaranteed #1. And might, in the general public consciousness, be fighting to be the absolute for the top spot.
Romantic, can we do it again? Can we do it again sometime? I'd like that. Woo, seaside rendezvous. Give us a kiss.